Every aircraft that has ever left the ground has had to master four forces, and they're lift, weight, thrust and drag. So pilots learn about this in day one of flight school, and it never stops being true, whether you're a Cessna light aircraft pilot or whether you're a pilot flying a jumbo jet. But here's the part that nobody tells you: your business is flying under the exact same principles right now, whether you realise that or not. In today's video, I want to show you the forces that are already acting on your business, whether you've noticed them or whether you haven't noticed them, and which one is exactly, or which one I should say is most likely, holding you back or holding you on the ground right now. So before I got involved in business coaching, I was a commercial flight instructor. I was operating out of a place called Western Airport based in Dublin, Ireland. In that period of time, I suppose I sat beside hundreds of student pilots, teaching them to read instruments, manage forces that they cannot see, and, to make real decisions that really and truly have a real life consequence. But what I've come to realise since moving into the coaching is that most self-employed people, or most business people as a matter of fact, they're trying to fly the business the same way a nervous first year student tries to fly an aircraft. They're trying to operate on instinct, on adrenaline, and you know what? They're hoping the numbers work out. But there is a better way, and it starts with understanding those four principles that are already acting on your business today. So for the next, 8 to 10 minutes, join with me. Let us walk through each one of these properly, and let us look at the first one. So it's called lift, and lift is the upward force that gets an aircraft off the runway. It is created when air moves across the shape of the wing, and it is only when the conditions are right. If you have the wrong angle of attack, or if you have the wrong speed, or if you don't have the amount of runway, you're never going to get airborne. It's just a fact. That is just a principle. But in business, lift is created also in a very similar way. But it's when we look at three things together, we ask, what is your offer? What is your positioning? And what is your content? And when those three are aligned, you know what? Lift happens within your business. It just happens on its own. You manage to see the right people, you get the right messages at the right time, and momentum builds without you forcing it. And here's where most self-employed people go wrong. They assume that the problem is effort. They work longer hours, they post, more often, they chase leads, and they wonder why nothing changes. But in flight terms, that is like a pilot pushing the throttle full forward while the wings may be angled in the incorrect way. More power will not fix a lift problem, but the truth is better alignment will. So if your business feels like it's taxing endlessly down the runway before you add more effort, ask yourself honestly whether your offer is clear, whether your positioning is sharp, and whether the content that you actually are producing is actually reaching the right audience. So if you fix the alignment first, the lift tends to follow. So ask yourself this question. It's one I asked myself several times. If a stranger heard you describe your offer once, would they understand exactly who it is for and what changes for them? If you had to explain your business in one sentence right now, would it come out clear, or would it come out as three sentences all stitched together, saying the same thing basically? If we look at the second segment that I wish to talk about, it's weight. Weight is everything in an aircraft. An aircraft has to overcome so many things to get airborne. You remember, you have the passengers, you have the fuel, you have the cargo itself, and the actual aircraft airframe. Now, not all of that is bad, but all of it is necessary for some degree. But too much of it, and the plane simply can't fly. And in a very similar way, in business, weight can show up as overheads, administration, unnecessary complexity, and the quiet weight of self-doubt that most people would never mention out loud. Nobody's ever scaled a business by adding more spreadsheets. And yet most people's instinct under pressure is to add more systems, more tools, more tabs, open on the laptop and think that the busyness is the same thing as progress. But the truth is, it isn't. Every extra ounce of unnecessary weight means that your lift and thrust have to work harder just to keep you level, never mind climbing. It's hard to believe when you look at it in those kind of ways. But the fix with this issue is not complicated, though it does take honesty. Ask yourself, what am I carrying right now in the business? What are the tasks? What are the tools? What are the mental weights of doubt or comparison? And you're going to have to cut what does not need to be there anymore. The same amount of lift in a lighter aircraft takes you higher, and it gets you there an awful lot faster. So again, ask yourself the question, how many tools or scripts or subscriptions am I paying for? Could you do without those things? Would it move or nudge your business forward? You have to be really honest. Ask yourself, how much of my week goes on the tasks that feel productive, but that nobody would actually miss them if I stopped doing them? These are really valid questions to ask. When we look at section 3, we talk about thrust. So thrust itself is the engine of the business, but it's the force that actually drives the aircraft forward once lift is present. And you know what? Without thrust, an aircraft with perfect lift and manageable weight still goes nowhere. It simply just sits in the tarmac looking the part. Excuse me. But in business, thrust is the consistent action. It's showing up on the days motivation is clearly taking the day off. It's the daily habits, it's the outreach, it's the content, it's the follow-up calls. And you do these things when times you just don't feel like doing them. And this is where I see the biggest gap between people who talk about scaling and people who actually do it. Plenty of self-employed owners have a decent offer and they've manageable overheads. But what separates the ones who grow from, the ones who stall? What is it? A lot of it is the willingness for the person to stay in the game, even though things aren't going in the right direction. But the good news in all of this is that, thrust is the one force almost entirely within your control. You cannot always control the market or the market conditions or how quickly leads warm up to you, but you can control whether you show up today. So it's about time we start to build the trust of habit, consistent thrust, and the plane starts moving forward even before conditions are perfect. Now the real question is, ask yourself, what did you actually do yesterday or even today to move your business forward? Not to think about it, not to plan, but to actually do it. And if the motivation left in the building, isn't there, are you still going to show up tomorrow? Are you still going to try and implement what you've learned today and to try and move forward? Look, the next section we talk about drag. Drag is the resistance in the air, and every single aircraft experiences drag, and that's with no exceptions. Even the most advanced jet in the world has to push through drag. But the goal was never to eliminate that completely, because it's just simply not possible. That's just principles of flight. But the goal is to generate enough lift and thrust to outperform it. So let's look at it in a business terms. Drag looks like hesitation, friction in your systems, and it can often be fear dressed up as caution. But it's the extra approval step that you don't need. The pricing conversation you keep avoiding, the launch you keep delaying until conditions feel perfect. The truth is conditions are rarely perfect. Pilots never wait for zero turbulence. They plan for it and they fly anyway. They can fly around it, they can fly above things. Sometimes you have to fly through these things. But here's the mild and honest truth. If you're waiting for drag to disappear before you move forward in your business, you're going to be waiting an incredibly long time. Instead, look where the friction actually is. Sometimes it can be a system problem. Sometimes it can be something really simple that can be worth fixing. But often it's really simple. It can be fear, and the only real fix for that is thrust. It's powering through it. Again, ask yourself the question, what is the one decision that you've been putting off for weeks, maybe months, maybe years in your business that you already know the answer to? But be honest with yourself. And the thing is, try not to fear, try and have faith to be able to push through those things. So look, to bring this talk together, I just want to explain to you that they're the 4 forces that we've been speaking about. Lift, which is created by your offer, your positioning and your content working together. The weight, which is the overhead and the doubt that has been carrying, that doesn't need carrying you, that doesn't need to be there. The thrust, which is, your consistent daily action. And the drag, which is the resistance that every single business faces. You don't need to eliminate the drag, just outperform it. So, a pilot doesn't think about these forces once and forgets them. They're checked constantly on every single flight. Your business deserves the same attention. Not obsessively, but just honestly and on a regular basis. Look, I have a small little challenge for you. Maybe it's a call to action. Out of the 4 forces that we've discussed there, lift, weight, thrust and drag, which one do you feel is currently holding your business back right now? Look, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to be able to help you if you're open to that suggestion. And let us see if we can help you in some way. We also have a 5-day challenge. If you'd like to be part of that 5-day income challenge, or I call it the 5-day income breakthrough challenge, and we discuss for about 30 minutes each day over a 5-day period, and different things that are holding your business back. We look at the lift, the weight, the thrust and the drag. So hopefully if you'd like to do that, please leave a message in the comments and we'll see you in the next video. Between now and then, have a great week. Thank you and God bless.